Thank you, Chairman Miller, for allowing me the honor of introducing Laura Ditka, who's a constituent and a friend of mine from Western Pennsylvania, a longtime friend. Ms. Ditka received her bachelor's degree from Ohio University and her law degree from Duquesne University School of Law. She is an Allegheny County Deputy District Attorney and the founder of Allegheny County Child Abuse Unit. In this capacity as head of that unit, Ms. Ditka is the lead attorney responsible for cases dealing with child abuse and homicide in Allegheny County. Her experience includes 130 jury trials and more than 20 homicide trials. Additionally, Ms. Ditka is an adjunct professor at the Community College of Allegheny County and the chairwoman of the Allegheny County Arbitration Division. Today, Ms. Ditka will be testifying on behalf of Fight Crime, Invest in Kids, an organization of more than 4,000 police chiefs, sheriffs, prosecutors, and victims of violence. I look forward to hearing her testimony and highly recommend her to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member McKeon, Congressman Altmaier, and members of this committee. First, let me thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I hope to give you some anecdotal evidence about what results when there is not home visitation and when there is not early intervention in children's lives, particularly at-risk children in our communities. As a prosecutor for 20 years, there was such a need in Allegheny County that I was able to start the child abuse unit. There are 4 lawyers in our small county that do nothing but child abuse all day, every day, resulting from sexual abuse, physical abuse, and neglect. And I'm not here today to vilify parents. Certainly there are cases that come before me where people act with villainous intent. But in many, many of the cases that we see, there are parents that just do not have the skills, the resources, or the knowledge necessary to care for their children in an appropriate and way that will help them thrive later in society and as individuals. I'd like to give you a couple examples. Last month, I sentenced 2 young women in their 20s. Between the 2 of them, they had 7 children. They'd been lifelong friends since grade school. Those women decided that they needed to blow off some steam and went out for a night on the town. They left their 7 children home alone. The oldest of the children were 2 8-year-olds. The 8-year-olds began playing with matches. They burned down the house. They were unable to get their siblings out, and 5 of them perished. The sentencing was an emotional and gut-wrenching event. These mothers loved their children. They did not wish to harm their children, but nobody had taught them the dangers that might befall leaving children of such a young age at home, and the consequences were grave. On that same street in this at-risk neighborhood, I currently have a case, a mother, again, very young, with a special needs child who is somewhat ill-equipped to deal with the needs of her child, has turned to drugs and alcohol. In her home, faulty wiring started a fire. She was so intoxicated that she was unable to tell the police and firefighters that arrived at the scene how many children she had, and her oldest child, who was 6, perished in that fire. Again, not a mother that had any ill intent towards her child, any sort of malice or malicious will, just ill-equipped to deal with what was put before her. And at-home visiting and this bill, Education Begins at Home, would greatly improve those skills that are needed for these parents. There's not only a component with children that are harmed, that type of abuse, but one of the stories that will stay with me throughout my career, and in fact till the end of my days, a case that I did, a number of young mothers from the inner city didn't know what to do with their children. A gentleman came along with some means and some education and suggested to these mothers that he could watch their children and give them a better life. And these mothers essentially gave this man their children. I prosecuted him for abusing 11 of the children that were in his home, ranging from the age of 14 to the age of 2. And what stuck with me was the young man who was 11 years old told me, "Miss Laura, I know he did bad things, but he was the best dad I ever had. He made me go to school. He cared about my homework. He took me to church. He had me play baseball." And that young man was then removed from this abusive home and put back to a home with a mother who still had no skills. And 2 years ago, I was testifying before a judge asking for leniency because that young man had now reached 18 and was turning to a life of crime and selling drugs to help support he and his wife and his young infant child. This program has such positive outcomes. Let me just give you some good examples of what can happen from this. In houses where there has been, and in Allegheny County we use the Nurse Family Partnership, in houses where there has been visitation, 60% of the mothers and 60% of the children no longer are arrested because of that early intervention. Test scores have gone up. 43% of the children have scored above the 50th percentile in cognitive ability, making them better prepared for school, better prepared for high school, and hopefully onto a college and a productive societal ethic. There are $103 billion spent each year on child abuse. The cost-benefit analysis shows that these programs, for each dollar spent, reduces that cost by making people productive members of society. I have two empirical data that I would ask the committee to accept, one from the PCCD in Pennsylvania on the economic returns of home visiting, and one from Fight Crime and Prevent Invest in Kids on breaking the cycle of child abuse. In summation, I would like to encourage you, at all possible, to reduce my workload, to give me more people to prosecute, to give people more ability to care for their children so we can have a brighter future tomorrow and in the future. Thank you very much.